The studio lights were warm and bright, but the energy backstage felt cold and tense. Meghan Markle sat quietly in the green room of the Late Show with Stephen Colbert, her hands folded, her eyes steady but distant. Her publicist paced near the door, checking her phone every few seconds. The producers had promised a respectful conversation. But everyone in Meghan's team knew what that really meant: questions that sounded polite but carried a sharp edge. The show was being aired live internationally tonight. Meghan was here to talk about her new children's book, the podcast that had just crossed 10 million downloads, and her foundation's recent push into global mental health initiatives. It was supposed to be a clean, uplifting appearance. Something about this setup felt different. Off on the main stage, Colbert greeted the cheering audience with his usual charm and wit. He cracked a few political jokes, teased the commercial sponsors, and then smiled into the camera. "Tonight," he said, "a guest who has lived through one of the strangest intersections of royalty, fame and firestorms in modern history. Please welcome Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex." As the crowd applauded, Meghan stepped onto the stage with calm confidence. Dressed in a tailored cream suit, she looked composed and graceful, every step measured. She shook hands with Colbert and took her seat beside the desk. For a few minutes, things felt smooth, almost too smooth. Colbert opened with warm questions. "How's life in California? How's Archie? What did Prince Harry think of her latest book?" Meghan answered easily, her voice steady, even smiling at a few light jokes. The audience responded warmly. But the tone began to shift. Colbert leaned forward slightly, his smile thinner now. "Let's talk about the British press for a moment," he said, "because that seems to follow you everywhere, fair or not." Meghan nodded, her smile fading just a bit. "It's been a part of my journey. Yes, but not one I ever invited." Colbert pressed on. "Some say your public story has become less about helping people and more about, well, controlling the narrative. Victimhood can be a kind of power too, can't it?" There was a long pause. The air in the room seemed to freeze. Meghan took a breath and responded carefully. "There's nothing powerful about being attacked for simply existing. But if speaking my truth helps others do the same, then I'll keep doing it." The audience clapped politely, but there were murmurs now. Something had changed. Colbert's eyes narrowed slightly. "Okay," he said, shifting in his seat. "But can I ask about something a bit off the record?" Meghan raised her eyebrows. "There have been rumors," he said, "strange ones, that you were quietly invited to Langley last year, that a few intelligence officials wanted your perspective on modern propaganda systems. Did that happen?" The crowd gasped. Meghan froze. For a second, something flickered behind her eyes, fear or calculation. No one could tell. She looked down at her lap, then back up. "I never asked to inherit what I now know," she said softly. Then she stood up without another word. Meghan turned and walked off stage. The camera followed her for a second before cutting to Colbert, who stared in stunned silence. The audience didn't know whether to applaud or stay quiet. Backstage, the control room was chaos. Producers shouted into headsets, unsure whether to cut to commercial or let it ride. But somewhere far beyond the studio, across the country, in a dark operations center in Fort Meade, Maryland, different kind of chaos was just beginning. A live AI surveillance system flagged Meghan's phrase the moment it was spoken. "I never asked to inherit what I now know." A red icon blinked on a console. A protocol file opened on a screen. The label at the top read, "Echo Windsor. Level 7 alert trigger phrase detected. Inherit what I now know status, active within seconds." Secured channels lit up across agencies. Somewhere in Virginia, a retired intelligence analyst was woken by a secure call. In London, a similar ping reached GCHQ's Special Ops Desk. Old files, long forgotten, began pulling from deep storage. And at the center of it, Meghan Markle, unaware that a single sentence spoken in front of a live audience had just opened a door that hadn't been touched since. 1997. The moment Meghan left the stage, chaos broke out behind the curtain. A floor manager whispered into a headset, asking if the cameras should cut to commercial. Colbert remained seated, blinking twice before giving the producers a subtle signal to fade out. The audience clapped nervously, unsure whether they had just witnessed a celebrity meltdown or the beginning of something deeper. Backstage, Meghan's publicist met her halfway down the corridor. "What did you just say out there?" she asked, wide-eyed. Meghan didn't stop walking. "Something I should have said a long time ago," she replied quietly. Outside the studio, a black SUV was already waiting. No press, no photographers. It was all arranged ahead of time, as if someone knew she might need to disappear quickly. Meghan climbed into the back seat, pulled the door shut, and took out her phone. One missed call. Blocked number. 3 words. In a text followed, "They heard you." At Fort Meade, a briefing was underway. Inside a sealed room beneath the NSA's headquarters, analysts gathered around a holographic screen displaying Meghan's interview in real time. The system's AI program, known only as Black Signal, had flagged her phrase within 4 seconds of it being spoken. "Inherit what I now know, a rare combination of words previously linked to a dormant surveillance trigger. Echo Windsor." "This wasn't random," said Deputy Director Blake Sutter. "That phrase was used once before, 28 years ago. Princess Diana, in a letter to her lawyer 3 months before she died." Handwritten. The room went silent. "So why is Meghan Markle using it now?" someone asked. Sutter didn't answer. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic in London, GCHQ received the same alert. In a classified division known as White Crest, an aging intelligence officer named Evelyn March sat staring at a dusty file pulled from storage. Inside was the original Diana letter, sealed under official secrets for nearly 3 decades. Scribbled across the margins was a note: "If anything happens to me, it won't be an accident." Meghan's phrase had reactivated a long dormant protocol designed to identify threats against royal figures who posed risks to international narratives. Echo Windsor was created in 1998, shortly after Diana's death, out of fear that her private writings would one day surface. Those writings had mentioned not just British institutions, but intelligence structures, offshore accounts, and names tied to NATO and U.S. defense contractors. Now, with Meghan speaking cryptically on international television, the program was awake again. In Los Angeles, Prince Harry sat watching the segment from a secure office inside the couple's foundation headquarters. When Meghan walked off the stage, his phone buzzed twice. Unknown number. Then it rang. He let it ring out. "Do we need to move?" asked his private security chief. Harry looked out the window. The street below was quiet, but he didn't trust quiet anymore. "Not yet," he said, "but call the pilot. I want the jet ready by morning." In New York, Meghan sat silently in the back of the SUV as it glided through Manhattan. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was from an encrypted app installed by a former NATO officer 2 years earlier. The message read, "Safe house ready. Langley contact compromised. Avoid air travel for 72 hours. She didn't reply. Instead, she closed her eyes and leaned her head back, thinking about something she hadn't thought about in months: a letter. It had arrived without return address, slipped under her hotel door during a charity trip in Nairobi. Inside was a copy of Diana's handwriting. "You were never meant to be silent. They just hoped you would be." And on the back, a single sentence: "If you ever say the phrase, the watchers will wake up." Now they were awake. And Meghan knew she was being hunted not by paparazzi or gossip bloggers, but by a system older, colder, and more powerful than she'd ever imagined. Somewhere in the darkness, Echo Windsor had become active again. And this time it wouldn't stop at surveillance. The safe house wasn't a house at all. It was a converted textile warehouse on the Brooklyn waterfront, disguised by faded signage, rusted shutters, and a broken keypad that wasn't broken at all. The SUV parked 2 blocks away. Megan, wearing a plain baseball cap and no makeup, walked the rest of the way with a silent operative named Mason. He didn't ask questions. He didn't speak unless necessary. But Megan knew his face. She'd seen it once during a classified UN security meeting in Geneva, where he was introduced only as liaison from somewhere that doesn't exist on paper. Inside, the building opened into cold concrete walls, buzzing fluorescent lights, and a long wooden table where an open laptop awaited her. Mason motioned toward it. They decrypted it. Megan sat down, heart tight. On screen was a scanned copy of Diana's letter, this time fully decoded. Not the redacted version she had received in Nairobi, not the softened copy buried in tabloids after her death, but the full, uncensored truth. And it wasn't just a letter. It was a map of connections. NATO contracts linked to philanthropic trusts. Off-the-record meetings between royals and intelligence brokers. A project called Silent Helix, never mentioned in public, but supposedly tied to global child trafficking investigations buried under national security exemptions. And at the center of it, 2 names underlined in red. Langley Briefing, 1995. Windsor descendant, undisclosed asset. Megan scrolled down. At the bottom of the document was Diana's final note, handwritten in shaky pen. They think bloodlines protect them, but it's silence that guards them more. Her hands trembled. She looked up at Mason. "So it's real," she whispered. He nodded. "And now you've said the words. There's no going back." Back at Fort Meade, Black Signal's AI interface pulsed red across multiple screens. Protocol Echo Windsor had triggered additional algorithms pattern recognition programs, designed to track voice prints, emotional shifts, and media response patterns in real time. One analyst stared at the waveform analysis. "She wasn't just speaking in code," he said. "She was broadcasting. To who? No one knew. But the AI had already picked up responses from servers in Brussels, Cape Town, and Cairo Private. Networks lighting up within 5 minutes of the interview airing. Someone out there had been waiting for her to say those exact words." Meanwhile, inside the British Embassy in Washington, Ambassador Philip Green was on a secured call to MI6 headquarters. "She's activated it," he said flatly. The voice on the other end was distorted. "We always feared this day would come. Begin containment protocol now. And if she refuses, then history will repeat itself." In Los Angeles, Harry paced the floor of their foundation's satellite office. A former intelligence aide from his time in the British military had flown in under an alias. The man, tall, bald, and blunt, spoke as he unpacked surveillance gear. "You understand what you've stepped into, right?" the man said. "Silent Helix was buried for a reason. Your mother poked at it once. You two just shouted at it on global television." Harry clenched his fists. "We didn't start this." "No," the man replied, "but you just became the reason they'll try to finish it." A knock came at the door. Harry reached for the emergency phone, but the aide stopped him. "It's her." The door opened and Megan stepped inside. Her face was pale, but her eyes, those same eyes the world once zoomed in on during red carpets and royal events, were sharp, determined. "They've been watching us since before we met," she said. "And not because of who we are, but because of what we carry." She placed the decrypted document on the table. "They think I'm the risk. But this is the reason my life changed overnight. Diana didn't die for speaking out. She died because she was too close to exposing something she wasn't meant to survive." Harry stared at the paper, then back at her. "What do we do?" Megan looked at the clock. "The real question is, who's already coming?" At that exact moment, across 3 countries, secure doors were being unlocked. In one, a former MI6 handler received a green light message. Secure the Windsor asset. Discretion optional. In another, ACIA official reviewed satellite positioning. An agent leaned in. Should we ground her? Not yet, the official replied. Let's see who else she wakes up first. Back in Brooklyn, Mason's phone buzzed. He checked it and immediately killed the lights. We've got movement, he said. Eyes in the sky. Meghan and Harry looked at each other, two people once trapped by tradition, now hunted by the machinery that built that tradition. And the war their mothers tried to escape had just come for them. 2 hours after the blackout in Brooklyn, 3 encrypted phones lit up in an underground server room beneath NATO's Brussels complex. It's a woman named Sarah Dumont, former French DGSE turned freelance geopolitical analyst, stared at the screen in silence. One of the signals bore an old code she hadn't seen in years. Echo Windsor Priority Crossfire. The last time it had surfaced, she was in Sarajevo. A royal delegation had been rerouted midair. Officially, it was due to a fuel leak. Unofficially, it was tied to a missing MI6 courier carrying files on Silent Helix. He was never seen again. Now, nearly 2 decades later, the name resurfaced and, this time, attached to Meghan Markle. She typed a single phrase into her off-grid system. What did Diana see? In Los Angeles, Harry watched a live satellite map shift red. Every known intelligence asset in North America had gone active. The map pulsed around D.C., London, Geneva, and now, oddly, Lagos. Meghan sat across from him. Listening to an intercepted audio file Mason had just decrypted from an NSA shadow cache. It was a voice memo from 1996. Diana's voice, I thought I was marrying into security. Stead, I was collateral with a smile. Every room had a camera. Every camera had an agenda. There was a pause. If anything happens to me, it won't be an accident. You'll know by the silence that follows. The room went still. Meghan swallowed hard. They recorded this and buried it. Ask no, Mason said. They preserved it as leverage. Harry clenched his fists. Leverage for what? Mason didn't answer. Instead, he pulled up another document. This one dated just weeks ago. A black budget intelligence. Exchange between GCHQ and the U.S. Director of National Intelligence. The memo contained 2 flagged threats under emerging unstable figures, Windsor 2M, Markle. Risk factor 7, non-conforming asset with legacy information. Windsor 1, H. Mountbatten Windsor. Risk factor 5, emotional trigger profile. Former military, unstable under stress. Meghan stood up. They're profiling us like assets, not people. No, said Mason. They're preparing for elimination. Meanwhile, in a high-security communications room inside Buckingham Palace, a senior aide to the king ended a call and turned to his colleague. She activated Echo Windsor, he said quietly. And worse, she's not backing down. The aide tapped a sealed red envelope marked with the crown's insignia. Inside was a directive that hadn't been opened since 1997. Its title read, Operation Night Page. Inside the CIA headquarters in Langley, a different conversation was unfolding. She was at the farm, an older analyst confirmed. 2019. Today's media resilience training, but that was just the cover. And the real agenda. Psychological patterning. Interview preconditioning. We tested her on something called the Dunbar trigger. The junior officer blinked. Isn't that used to identify future disruptors? Yes, the analyst said. She passed with a 92, but the algorithm misread her role, which was not the disruptor. He paused. The detonator. Back in Los Angeles, Harry received a direct ping on a closed channel LAN. Address and nothing more. Geneva, 72 hours, bring the files. Do not fly commercial. Meghan looked at him, expression unreadable. It's starting, she said, and it had cross continents, dormant alliances began to stir. Old operatives, those loyal not to governments but to secrets buried beneath them, got moving. Planes were fueled in quiet airstrips. Phones with no GPS and only one button powered on. But the couple weren't entirely alone. In a small radio station on the outskirts of Dublin, a man named Tom Dunley retired BBC Field. Journalist turned conspiracy podcaster watched a redacted version of Meghan's Colbert walk-off go viral again. The clip had been doctored by network producers, cutting out the phrase, "I never asked to inherit what I now know." But Dunley had recorded the live broadcast. He compared the audio files side by side, frame by frame. And when he realized what was missing, his pulse spiked. He picked up the phone and called a contact listed only as the Sparrow. "They're silencing her," Dunley said. "Same methods, same playbook." "But she's not playing along." The Sparrow replied, without hesitation. "Then we help her write the next chapter." As night fell over Los Angeles, Meghan stood at the window, looking out at the city that had become both haven and trap. "Do you regret it?" Harry asked her. She didn't answer at first. Then, quietly, "I regret not knowing sooner." "I don't. Regret knowing now." He reached out, taking her hand. "Then let's make them regret underestimating us." Outside, a black drone passed overhead. Just one, silent, watching. The game that began in shadows had just come into the light. And the next move would shake more than just a crown it would test. The private jet touched down just before dawn on a restricted airstrip outside Geneva. No customs, no media, just one SUV waiting, engine already running. Inside, Meghan sat wordlessly beside Harry, both of them staring out at the dim horizon. The files Mason had decrypted were stored on an offline tablet in Meghan's satchel. Taped to the back was an old photo Diana in a sun hat, smiling at the camera. It wasn't a keepsake. It was a key, literally. The Geneva facility wasn't listed on any map, nestled beneath the facade of an abandoned World Health Organization annex. It housed what intelligence circles once called the Quiet Volta Multinational. Neutral data chamber used during the Cold War for higher risk, high trust document exchanges. Since then, it had been mothballed. Its coordinates passed like sacred code between rogue diplomats and double agents. It was active again. They were met at the vault entrance by two men in civilian clothing. No names were given. One extended a gloved hand. "We're not here to ask questions," he said. "Only to observe the drop." Harry nodded and handed over the satchel. But Meghan held the tablet back a moment longer. "There's a condition," she said calmly. "We don't want immunity. We want transparency. Full." The taller of the two men raised an eyebrow. "Transparency gets people killed." "Silence gets people erased," she answered. "Pick your threat." There was a pause, then the man gave a single nod. The vault door opened. Inside, biometric scans flickered. To life, Meghan pressed the tablet to a secure reader. The system recognized it instantly, triggering a soft blue pulse around the chamber. In less than 3 seconds, a silent upload began. Files from multiple intelligence agencies, MI6, NSA, GCHQ, even internal royal family risk assessments started, sinking into a classified archive visible only to a secure group called the Third Column. "They'll see this?" Harry asked. "They already are," the operator replied. Meanwhile, back in London, a red phone rang in the private study of Lord Hadley Graham, senior advisor to the British Sovereign Council. He answered with a code. "St. Mark's Pulse," the voice replied, sharp and calm. Windsor 2 made the drop. Vault confirmed. Graham's face paled. "That information was never meant to be seen again. It's already in motion." "What about damage control?" "Containment is compromised. The Americans are fragmenting. France is neutral, and Berlin is watching." There was silence, then a decision. "Reactivate PRISM directive," Graham said. Back in Geneva, Meghan's upload finished. The moment the files hit the network, a series of digital triggers silently lit up across secure darknets. In Moscow, a retired SVR agent received an anonymous drop with the subject line, "The crown isn't yours." In Istanbul, a journalist, previously exiled for investigating royal family assets, received the original video footage of Diana's 1995 call to her bodyguard, the one where she mentioned a second family plan. And in Washington, a senator on the Intelligence Committee opened a file labeled Royal Contingency. Tier A, his hands trembled as he read aloud. The Duchess of Sussex publicly exposes state-protected intelligence, her neutralization shall be considered an allied emergency response. Suddenly, he realized what the word neutralization actually meant. And Meghan, she had always suspected this. Not the scope, but the willingness. The silent machine that could crush someone simply for refusing to disappear. After the Geneva drop, she and Harry went completely dark. Phones off. Travel untraceable. No digital trail. They left no signature. But others were waking up. Tom Dunley, the Irish journalist who'd held the unedited Colbert footage, published an audio leak that shook the global press. In it, Meghan's full quote played clearly. Uncut. "I never asked to inherit what I now know, but I refuse to be the final chapter of someone else's cover-up." The clip went viral in 4 hours. By 6, it had been scrubbed from every mainstream platform, but it was too late. The truth had already been mirrored on thousands of underground nodes, Telegram channels, and whistleblower sites. The phrase became a hashtag. Hashtag final chapter in Washington. Protesters gathered outside the Capitol. In London, the palace refused to issue a comment. And in Nairobi, a mural of Diana and Meghan appeared overnight on a wall, 2 women painted in shades of defiance, surrounded by surveillance cameras painted to look like ravens. By sunset, CNN, Al Jazeera, and BBC had launched emergency coverage. The question wasn't whether Meghan had walked away from the crown. It was whether the crown itself had walked away from the truth. At a safe house deep in the French Alps, Meghan watched the coverage on a muted screen while Harry spoke quietly with Mason. "They won't stop now," Mason said, "but neither will the people." "And the files?" Harry asked. Mason looked. Over at Meghan, they weren't just secrets. They were the blueprint. Outside, the first snow began to fall. Peaceful, clean. But beneath the surface, something irreversible had begun. The old world was cracking. And the next part of the story would be written not by monarchs, not by spies, but by the ones they tried to erase. The briefing room at NATO headquarters in Brussels was unusually quiet. 14 flags lined the curved wall, but everyone in the room was focused on a single tablet at the center of the long black conference table. On the screen was a map, flickering with red markers: Geneva, London, Washington, a silent web of unrest tied together by one name in bold white text. Meghan Markle, classified exposure tier A. An American intelligence analyst cleared his throat. As of 0600 GMT, the files uploaded from Vault Geneva have reached over 70 independent mirror sites. We've attempted takedown, but the content is fragmenting too fast. AI-based curation models have started adapting the narrative. The British representative ambassador Selby leaned forward. "What does that mean?" "It means," said the analyst, "your monarchy's secrets are being reinterpreted faster than you can shut them down. People aren't just sharing them, they're making sense of them." The French diplomat shook her head. "What I don't understand is why the Duchess would risk it. Why now?" A new voice entered the room, calm, clipped, and low. "Because the structure that protected her is the same one that erased her mother-in-law." All eyes turned to the man now entering the room, Director Malcolm Straith, U.S. Special Intelligence Liaison to NATO. He dropped a folder onto the table. Inside, photographs, surveillance logs. A 1997 internal memo marked eyes only. outlining contingency responses if Diana Spencer were to enter direct talks with foreign humanitarian watchdogs. Selby's voice dropped. Those documents were destroyed. Straith met his gaze. No, they were archived. And now they're public. There was silence. He continued. The Duchess walked off Colbert's stage for one reason. 'Cause? For the first time in 30 years, someone forced the system to look back at itself. She didn't break protocol. She broke silence. Meanwhile, in a quiet apartment in Berlin, a former GCHQ translator named Eliza Knox poured tea while staring. At her laptop screen, she had seen the files. All of them. One in particular haunted her handwritten letter from a private royal security officer, dated the night before Diana's crash, saying, "There's a second route, but they've insisted we use the tunnel." Lisa wasn't a journalist. She had no platform, but she had the files. She had nothing to lose. By midnight, she had launched a live stream titled Inherited Silence: What the Files Really Say. In 12 hours, it had over 18 million views. The platform tried. To take it down, it reappeared on 4 continents. From Nairobi to Los Angeles, people gathered in crowds, holding signs. "Truth is not treason, and she didn't walk off," she broke out. At the British Embassy in New York, security was doubled. Windows were blacked out. Inside, a crisis team reviewed. An emergency communication from Buckingham Palace. 4 words: secure Windsor chain, full blackout. But even within palace walls, cracks were forming. Prince William, sitting alone in a study at Clarence House, had watched the live stream twice. He looked tired, unshaven. A half-written statement sat in front of him, untouched. He picked up his phone. No press team. Kana, no palace advisor. He dialed an encrypted number he hadn't used in years. Kit rang once, twice. Then Meghan answered. Her voice was calm. "You shouldn't be calling this line." "I know," William said. "But I've seen the files." Pause. "What do you want?" He didn't answer right away. Then quietly, "To know if she really tried to leave?" Meghan sighed. She didn't try. She begged. Back in the Alps, Harry watched the snowfall outside. Mason was on another secure call, tracking NATO movements. Every intelligence node in Europe was active. Planes were being rerouted. Diplomats were being recalled. The Vatican had released a statement calling for deep institutional reflection. But Harry was thinking of something else, something smaller. The look in his brother's eyes the last time they spoke. And the way power had always come at the cost of memory. He turned to Meghan. "They won't let us go back," he said. She didn't flinch. "Then we go forward." At that same moment, a secret panel at MI6 headquarters opened for the first time in over a decade. Inside was a vault labeled "Only." Operation Regent Fall, contingency files, recorded calls, surveillance footage. It's been built for... The skies over New York were unusually quiet for a Thursday morning. No jets, no helicopters, no traffic on the bridges. By 8 a.m., an emergency alert had gone out across major U.S. cities. Standby. Secure perimeter protocols active. Number: cause for alarm. But in truth, alarm was everywhere. Outside the United Nations building, thousands stood in silence, holding candles. They weren't protesting. They were waiting. The night before, a single anonymous post had appeared on a new platform hosted out of Iceland. Final broadcast. Global feed. 9 a.m. EST. The origin was untraceable. The server location changed every second. No nation could block it. No agency could stop it. The feed was already embedding itself on every major media outlet, whether they liked it or not. The title read simply, "Inherited. Silence the final hour in a private bunker below the UN building." Ambassadors from 20 countries sat behind reinforced glass, eyes locked on a central screen. It flickered once, then the image sharpened. It was Meghan. She sat at a desk, calm, composed, with no flag behind her. No crown, no insignia, Just a white backdrop and a handwritten note taped to the corner of the frame. Truth doesn't belong to power, it belongs to people. She began softly. I was not raised to understand the weight of systems. I walked into one wearing gloves and a smile, thinking kindness would be enough. It never was. Across the world, screens lit up. In village homes, city squares, schools, military bases, the stream could not be turned off. I didn't come here to accuse, she continued. I came to remember, to give you what was hidden. The feed split. Now it showed documents, footage, letters, thousands, from private royal briefings to NATO contingency plans. From redacted MI6 memos to recordings between palace envoys and foreign intelligence chiefs. Every conspiracy that had once lived in the shadows was now bleeding into the light. And at the center of it, all Operation Region Fall, a 40-year covert strategy built by old empires. To maintain control through media manipulation, psychological pressure, and soft monarchy diplomacy. It wasn't just about Diana. It wasn't just about Meghan. It was about every person used to protect the illusion of order while the truth was buried. The stream returned to her face. I was told silence was safety. But silence is only safe for those who control it. Back in Clarence House, Prince William stood in front of a television, alone. Aides had stopped knocking. The palace PR machine had gone dark. When the broadcast revealed a hidden phone call between his late mother and a Swiss human rights lawyer, proof she was seeking asylum, he didn't move. He didn't cry. He simply whispered she really was trying to get out. In Washington, President Reyes watched with her full cabinet. The NSA director sat pale, his hands shaking. She's exposed every layer, he said. There's no way to put this back. President Reyes spoke without looking away. Then maybe it was never ours to keep hidden. At exactly 9:47 a.m., the broadcast ended with a final slide. It read, "This is not revenge. This is release." Then the screen went black. No sound, no outro, just silence. But the world was no longer the same. Within hours, mass resignations shook intelligence agencies across Europe. Parliament in the UK was forced into emergency session. A secret vote on the future of the monarchy was leaked 52% in favor of dissolving royal influence over government. Agencies in Nairobi, Berlin, Dublin, and Los Angeles. New grassroots coalitions formed calling not for chaos, but clarity. The movement had a name now, Echo Windsor. Harry and Meghan didn't go live again. They didn't need to. They were seen walking through a small mountain town in northern Italy days later. No press in sight, just holding hands. They didn't wave, they didn't smile for the cameras. But they looked free. Back at NATO, a final classified note was added to the global debrief log. Former asset tags, Duchess. Prince, subject closed. History reopened. In a small London cafe, a young girl looked up at her mother and asked, was the Queen part of the bad people? Her mother didn't answer right away. She only said, sometimes we don't see the whole story until someone refuses to stay. Quiet. And with that, the truth uncontrolled, unrehearsed, and irreversible spread. Not like wildfire, but like dawn.